Welcome to Informally Formed. Every week we try to bring you exciting new guests that we can learn from and grow. Our today's guest runs a diversified business conglomerate that employs over 10,000 people, serves on the board of several organizations, a poet that won the Sark Literary Award in 2006, featured in BBC 100 Women in 2013 and 2014, and the first elected female president of Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, BGMEA, an organization whose members represent 85% of Bangladesh's export earnings, an outspoken visionary, and also a very tenacious and determined individual to have completed her PhD in 2018. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Rubana Huq.
Thank you very much for having me in your program, and thank you for all the special adjectives that you had attached to my name. But of course, the tenacity bit actually got to me, and I think, in a positive manner, because tenacity is something that I would like to imagine that I have, that I possess. But yes, it was fun doing the PhD.
Dr. Huq, we have such limited time during our session, so I'll try and cover as much as I can because there is so much that I would like to ask you and our audiences would like to know. My first question to you, of course, is we all know the terrible times that we're going through because of the pandemic and the effect that it had on our garment exports, particularly in the months of March, April, and May. We picked up since then, from June on. September, I believe we crossed the $3 billion mark. But my question to you is, of all the past cancellations and deferrals and stuff, how far of that have we recovered? Your comments on that, Dr. Huq.
Thank you. So in March, we had a minus 86% growth. In April, we had a minus 62%. We recovered slightly in August with a 3.3+% increase, and in September it's again down to 2.56. Yes, we have recovered, and no, we haven't. So I really cannot give you a straight answer on that, because yes, the orders have been reinstated. At least 90% of the orders have come back, but they've come back with a huge liability, including buyers asking for deferred payment up to 180 days and beyond. Some are even saying that we don't know when we'll be able to take your goods. So as a responsible manufacturing hub, we cannot really default on our sovereign rating. So we have to pay out our suppliers, and at the same time, end up with a huge liability at our end. So at any given point of time, Bangladesh has at least $8 billion in receivables. The problem is we have such loose contracts with our buyers that it's not ever guaranteed. That credit is never actually insured. So we need a scheme to do that, and we need to also have stronger contracts with the buyers. So yes, we have recovered a bit because we've been able to at least bring our cancellations back. They're restored, but at the same time, the financial liability is still huge at our end, and many of the buyers are also asking for discounts. So we are entering very risky phase, I would say.
Right. Dr. Huq, let me ask you, have you thought about the possibility of a second wave? And if that were to happen in the Western world, are we prepared for that, Dr. Huq?
The second wave, if that really comes in the West, that of course impacts our production, because without the Western support, we will not have anything to produce in our factories. So if there's no demand, there's no supply. But at the same time, in non-traditional markets, our exports are also going up. Very little, but it's still something. Everything counts. So if there is a second wave, we have a reason to be worried. But also, America has been opening up a little bit for us. So the US-China trade war has benefited us a little bit, I would say, not as much as we really hoped. And also because US is now investigating Vietnam's currency manipulation, that probably gives us another opportunity to benefit out of the scene. So I'm hoping that, you know, we won't really suffer. And for how long are consumers not going to buy? In general, I think we will be able to withstand the shock. Let me bring in the reference of PPE into our discourse. So it's a personal protective equipment, and it includes masks, you know, surgical robes and everything, suits, hazmat suits. So Bangladesh has actually gone up. We've literally doubled our production. So at current moment, we are at least supplying $500 million worth of PPE to the Western countries, and we were at a 250 something. So there has been an increase. So we're hoping that, you know, there will be alternative markets to pick up on. There'll be diversified products to pick on. But, you know, at the end of the day, we also need to have an inward-looking economy. So we need to also turn to our domestic needs. So that is also important. And of course, apart from the West, we should be also thinking about exporting to ASEAN, to the East.
Absolutely.
So ASEAN +1 is something that we would like to bring into the whole discourse of market diversification.
Absolutely, Dr. Huq, I couldn't agree with you more. ASEAN +1, China +1. I mean, these are look East policy, as it's the age of Asia, like they say, the century of Asia. I must also ask you, Dr. Huq, last year, well, in particular last year, the trade war has been going on for quite a while. But last year, even some of your BGMEA, I guess, board members very boldly stated that we were going to get quite a big chunk of, you know, exports, garments exports that was moving out of China. But unfortunately, last year, we saw a decline rather. So bulk of it went to Vietnam and, you know, other countries. We didn't see what we were hoping to see. Now, that is not meant as a criticism. We would love to see a whole bunch come to Bangladesh.
I was actually very cautious when I answered that wave of optimism, because, you know, we have, at least with China, we have overlapping at least 30 products, out of which on 16, we literally have not seen any increase. The increase from any business out of America, which could come our way, would be on man-made fiber-based garments. So ladies' blouses, kids actually went up a little bit. So it's all man-made fiber for which we are not ready.
Exactly.
So all the non-cottons are something that we should be all, you know, concentrating on. Lingerie is actually going up from America. So these, you know, but production units don't grow overnight. A lot of people don't have lingerie factories. A lot of people just don't do fluid blouses or, you know, non-cotton products. We are so cotton-based. You know, when the world is actually going non-cotton, we are growing in cotton. There are often product mismatches, which is responsible for not having enough business from America. Also because, you know, ever since America gave up on the duty-free and we were deprived, not the garment sector, of course, somehow, you know, an aversion to expanding into America kind of set in. And we sort of felt that, you know, whatever comes from America will be based on political will. So economic diplomacy, I don't think, did its part as well. Right now, we are trying to recover, and there's a very strong discussions between the government and the US Chamber, and we are hoping at one point we should be able to make full use of it, because you know what, there are simple issues like US cotton coming into Bangladesh. And when it does, what we do is we almost do double fumigation. Costs us 6 cents more. It's fumigated at the airport, and when it comes in, we fumigate it again, which probably is not required. But this has been going through so many ministries and desks. You just don't know where it ends, where the buck stops. So if we really want to aggressively pursue any market, our economic diplomacy also needs to be aggressive and proactive and not reactive. So we need alignments with the markets that we want to actually export to. Without that, just because of a China-US trade war, it's not going to flow our way. It's going to come in for sure. A little bit has come, and our exports to America has gone up. It hasn't really dipped. But we could have a better price. Overall, Bangladesh has suffered by almost 1.6% of price dip over the last 4 years. I mean, if this continues, then, you know, no matter how much we produce, if we produce it for less, what good does it do for us?
Right, right. Dr. Huq, I'll pick up on a couple of points, and I totally agree with what your general assessment of what you said. One of the things is, why do you suppose our garment manufacturers, textile in particular, I would say, did not see the trend? The world moving on to a higher and higher percentage of synthetic fiber and or mix of synthetic fiber, while we stayed with natural fiber. That's one. And the other one, I recently did a session with Dr. Zaidi Sattar, where we talked about your exchange rate. And we strongly advocated that our exchange rate needs to be really re-looked at. We ought to immediately look at a 10% depreciation of the taka, because our competitive nations like India, Pakistan, you name Vietnam, like you said, America is looking at Vietnam's currency manipulation, but nevertheless, you can well imagine to the extent that they have depreciated, including this year. So your comments on that as well, Dr. Huq, if you would kindly.
Okay, so with regard to backward linkage, and of course the cotton-based trend that we have at our end, you know, when we set up our backward linkage, when we went vertical, we were, I mean, that's less expensive. You know, synthetic setup takes a lot of money, and so far, you know, we have been downright protectionists. We haven't even invited FDI in backward linkage. So you see, what has happened is we have shot ourselves. I mean, it was almost a boomerang for us, because right now, when the rest of the world is full-on exporting man-made fiber-based products, we are still struggling with our cotton and pretty stubborn about it as well. So yes, often there is a conflict of interest that clouds our vision. So we need to be more forthright, and we've been saying to everyone that, look, let's set up man-made fiber-based plants. If we can't, let's invite FDI. Let's invite joint venture. You know, joint venture, FDI, joint venture would benefit us, because that way we would also have the product knowledge, we would have time to understand, and also at the same time, you know, if we go for a buyback scheme, then we are all covered. So regarding the currency comment, I can only offer my limited comment on this, and that is, we understand the government's pain with regard to import payments. What we basically suggested to the government was very simple. We said, you know, out of $1, supposing we are selling anything for $1, 75 cents goes for, you know, procuring raw materials and everything, you know, fabric and accessories. 25 cents is, it stays with us, including salary payment for the workers. So what we said was, in this 25%, in this 25 cents, give us a 5 taka advantage. Now, you know, we've talked about it, and that figure does not come up to more than 3,000 crores at the max. So it's not a huge thing. This 3,000 crores would give us so much of advantage that we could actually shoot our exports up through the ceiling. But that's not happening, because the moment we say this, experts say, you know, it's dual currency. It's not actually. We could just name it some scheme. We could say, you know, exporters assistance scheme or something, and we could have avoided it. So in Bangla, there's a phrase called, you know, if you can't eat this way, you can always do it this way. So I mean, there are so many ways to solve issues, but we often see mindsets clouding the scenario, and it becomes difficult for the export landscape to change.
So what you're talking about is a subsidy. What we're talking about is really across the board depreciation, which ought to happen. So anyways, Dr. Huq, let's move on. I have a couple of other things to cover with you as well. Very quickly, which is, you know, I've had discussions with heads of banks. One of the biggest concerns is, you know, when the moratorium ends and payments come due, what happens? Once the moratorium is up, and it could be extended, we know it could be, it's possible, the government could extend it, but if it's not extended, what do you see as the outlook?
It's going to be very difficult paying up, because we have to receive payments from our customers as well. Unless that actually resumes and the steady flow resumes, it's going to be very difficult. So we will need steady support from the government, at least policy support from the government, for another 6 months for sure. For sure. It's such a big sector. It's not easy to steer it without hiccups. So we will need protection for sure.
Right. Dr. Huq, one last question and then we'll wrap it up with that. And we know the whole world is reeling with the effect of the pandemic. But there is this big, much bigger issue out there that is still looming, which is climate change and everything that entails. Everyone has to do their part in reducing the carbon footprint, the water footprint, because the earth simply cannot sustain the rate at which we consume. Now, it is more so really, the onus is on the Western world that consumes so much, but then again, it goes hand in hand. If they don't consume, how do we sell? But anyways, my wider question to you is, Dr. Huq, I know in the past, buyers have been really sometimes been overly aggressive in pushing down these reforms. It's not that we don't want to do it, but sometimes it's been very difficult for the factory owners because there are multiple programs going on at any given time. Your thoughts on that moving forward, Dr. Huq?
So environment has always been not a prescribed thing for us at all. So far, we've gone green because we wanted to. Nobody asked us to go green except for a very few brands. And you know, luckily, 500 factories are almost in the pipeline of being certified by LEED for being green. We have over 49 factories which are just platinum. The top 10 factories that were just, you know, announced the other day in the world, the top green, 50% is from Bangladesh. So we have absolutely world-class infrastructure. But yes, the hypocrisy does not come from our end. It comes from many of the buyers' end. Because the buyers talk about sustainability and they really don't think about sustainable livelihoods. So are we to assume that the buyers often think about their reputational risks and not about the overall improvement? So we are trying to address all of it because there's a big dichotomy between sustainable sourcing and sustainable supply. And we have recently formed RMG Sustainability Council, which has fire, electrical, and structural, and we have also labor and environment component on it. And in the environment component, we are insisting that business environment, the discourse of business environment must also come in. It cannot be just about what we are not doing right. It has to be about what each one of us, whether it's industry, labor, or brands, what are we all collectively doing right? Or what are we remediating? The question is not about prescription anymore. The question is about alignments. So, I mean, just consuming one jacket less has a huge impact on us. But at the same time, you know, can we tell our stories better to the Western consumers? Can we tell them that, you know, the lives that depend on their consumption are actually at risk when they don't? So how can we also get better? Because at our end, we are going climate positive. We are going for zero waste. We have signed up with UNFCCC Charter. So there's literally nothing that we are not doing to ensure that we are compliant with the global call for sustainability. But where is active participation of the brands being accountable to that entire discourse? It cannot be about us being always getting marks. I mean, we also have a right to share with everyone who makes us comfortable and who doesn't. So we, at the end, I mean, I can only say that we have a staple slogan in BGMEA that I've started, and it says, hashtag Go Human, Go Green. So Go Human, Go Green is something that we are really, really trying to promote. And at the same time, you know, just to end with just a thought for you to ponder on, we have green factories, but do we have green prices? And I end with that. I think that'll make you think. I think that'll make our audience think. And if we can all join hands together and strategize, we'll welcome any approach, any proposal from any of your ends. Thank you.
With those thoughts, Dr. Huq, I guess this would be our time to say goodbye. I would like to thank you so very much for your kind time that you have given us today. And I would like to thank our audience for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Stay safe. Bye-bye.